Day 1 at Wimbledon 2025 delivered psychological carnage. Two top 10 seeds, expected to cruise through their opening rounds, instead crashed out in spectacular fashion. Holger Rune, seeded 8th, lost to 143rd-ranked Nicolas Jarry after leading by 2 sets. Daniil Medvedev, seeded 9th, fell to Benjamin Bonzi, ranked 64th. These weren't close battles that could go either way. These were psychological collapses that reveal everything about how expectations can become mental prison cells in high-pressure sports.
What we witnessed today is a perfect case study in how psychological pressure can completely override technical skill and physical preparation. When you're expected to win easily, every point your opponent takes becomes magnified. The mental burden of expectations can be more exhausting than the physical demands of the match itself.
The fascinating thing about these upsets is the timing. Both happened on day 1 when the pressure is at its peak. Opening rounds at Grand Slams aren't just about tennis. They're about managing the weight of expectations, media attention, and the fear of early embarrassment on the biggest stage.
Today we're dissecting the psychology of spectacular failure, how expectations become mental quicksand, why some players thrive under pressure while others crumble, and what these shocking upsets reveal about the invisible mental game that determines who advances and who goes home on day 1. Let's start with the numbers that tell the story. Holger Rune, ranked 8th in the world, was up 2 sets to love against Nicolas Jarry, ranked 143rd. In tennis, that's supposed to be game over. Statistically, players who lead by 2 sets win over 95% of the time. Rune wasn't just ahead, he was in complete control. Then something shifted in his mind, and everything unraveled.
I just tried to fight until the end. When you're 2 sets down, you have nothing to lose. I started playing more freely, and he maybe started thinking about the finish line too early.
That phrase, nothing to lose, is psychologically crucial. Jarry, facing certain defeat, entered what psychologists call a liberation mindset. When expectations disappear, mental constraints disappear too. Meanwhile, Rune was dealing with the opposite problem, the crushing weight of certainty that he should win easily.
This is a textbook example of choking under pressure versus thriving under pressure. Rune's brain likely shifted from executing tennis shots to protecting a lead. That's when athletes start playing not to lose instead of playing to win, and it's psychological poison.
Medvedev's collapse tells a different but equally devastating psychological story. Unlike Rune, who had a lead to protect, Medvedev never found his rhythm. He was broken in the very first game and never recovered mentally. Sometimes the expectation to dominate becomes so heavy that early adversity feels catastrophic.
I felt like I didn't play too bad. I don't see much I could do better. I was surprised by his level. I would be surprised if you find a match of him playing like this any other time this year. I'm surprised he did today.
Notice how Medvedev's response focuses entirely on his opponent's unexpected level rather than examining his own mental state. That's classic deflection. He can't accept that the pressure of expectations might have affected his own performance, so he attributes the loss to his opponent having a career day.
This wasn't isolated to just Rune and Medvedev. Day 1 saw a total of 4 seeded players in the top 24 crash out, making it one of the most upset-heavy opening days in recent Wimbledon history. But what makes these upsets particularly fascinating from a psychological perspective is the specific mental burdens each carried. Rune has been struggling with consistency this year, making his seeding feel more like pressure than privilege. Medvedev has never won Wimbledon and is getting older. Time is running out. Psychology of being supposed to win creates a mental trap that's invisible to spectators but suffocating for players. When you're the 8th seed facing the 143rd ranked player, every point you lose feels like a failure. When you're the 9th seed and fall behind early, every missed shot becomes evidence that you're choking.
This is what we call outcome anxiety. When athletes become so focused on the result they're supposed to achieve that they can't focus on the process needed to achieve it. Their attention shifts from how do I hit this shot to what happens if I lose this point, and that mental shift is performance death.
Meanwhile, Jarry and Bonzi were operating from completely different psychological frameworks. They weren't expected to win, so every game 1 felt like a bonus. They weren't protecting anything, they were hunting. That's the mental freedom that allows players to take risks and play their best tennis.
I've seen this dynamic destroy careers. Players get seeded high enough that they're always supposed to win early rounds, but not high enough to feel secure. It's a psychological no man's land where every first round becomes a potential disaster rather than an opportunity.
Contrast in body language tells the whole story. Watch footage of these matches, and you can see the exact moments when the psychological shift happened. Rune's shoulders started drooping after losing the 3rd set. Medvedev's head dropped after losing the 1st. Their opponents, meanwhile, started standing taller and moving with more confidence.
Body language is a window into mental state. When players start protecting leads or trying to avoid embarrassment, their entire physicality changes. They become reactive instead of proactive, defensive instead of aggressive. Meanwhile, their opponents sense this shift and gain confidence from it.
Timing of these collapses also matters psychologically. Rune's breakdown happened in sets 3, 4, and 5, exactly when physical fatigue combines with mental fatigue to create maximum vulnerability. Medvedev's collapse happened immediately, suggesting he was already defeated mentally before the match really began.
There are two distinct patterns here. Rune experienced what we call late-stage choking, performing well until the pressure of finishing becomes overwhelming. Medvedev showed anticipatory anxiety, being so worried about potential failure that he couldn't access his normal performance level from the start.
What makes these psychological collapses particularly devastating is that they become self-reinforcing. Once Rune started questioning his ability to close out matches, every difficult moment confirmed his fears. Once Medvedev fell behind early, it validated his anxiety about not being good enough on grass.
The media narrative also plays a huge role. Both players came into Wimbledon with question marks about their form and mental toughness. When you're constantly asked about your ability to handle pressure, that messaging gets internalized. The seeds of today's collapses were planted weeks ago in press conferences.
Broader tennis establishment also creates psychological pressure through seedings and expectations. When Rune is seeded 8th, the implicit message is you should easily beat anyone ranked outside the top 50. That expectation becomes a weight around the player's neck rather than a confidence boost.
There's also what we call perfectionism paralysis. Both Rune and Medvedev are known for being extremely hard on themselves. When perfectionists start making mistakes under pressure, they often spiral because they can't accept that errors are normal parts of competition.
Psychological damage from these upsets extends far beyond today's results. Rune now has to live with the knowledge that he blew a 2-set lead at Wimbledon. Medvedev faces questions about his ability to perform on grass courts. These defeats create mental scar tissue that affects future performances.
The rankings impact is brutal too. Both players will drop significantly, which affects their seeding at future tournaments. Lower seedings mean harder draws, which creates more pressure situations where they'll have to prove they can handle expectations. It's a vicious cycle.
For their opponents, these victories are psychological gold. Jarry and Bonzi now know they can beat top 10 players on the biggest stage. That confidence boost will carry into future matches and potentially transform their careers. They've proven to themselves that rankings don't determine outcomes, mental state does.
The ripple effects throughout the draw are also significant. Other lower-ranked players watching these upsets get the message that anyone can be beaten on any given day. Meanwhile, other top seeds might start questioning their own invincibility. Confidence and doubt are both contagious in tournament settings.
These upsets also reveal something crucial about the mental game at the highest level of tennis. Physical preparation and technical skill can only take you so far. When the pressure is highest, mental resilience and the ability to manage expectations become the determining factors between victory and devastating defeat. So what can we learn from today's psychological carnage? First, that expectations are often heavier burdens than advantages. Being seated high comes with mental pressure that can be more challenging than facing a higher-ranked opponent. The weight of supposed to win can crush performance.
Athletes need to reframe expectations as opportunities rather than obligations. Instead of "I have to beat this lower-ranked player," the mindset should be "I get to show my skills against someone with nothing to lose." That small mental shift can prevent the anxiety spiral that destroys performance.
Nothing to lose mentality that helped Jarry and Bonzi also offers lessons for how anyone can approach high-pressure situations. When you stop protecting what you think you should have and start pursuing what you could achieve, performance often improves dramatically.
From a preparation standpoint, these upsets show why mental training is just as important as physical training. Players spend hours working on their serves and backhands, but often neglect the psychological skills needed to handle expectations and adversity.
The key insight is that psychological pressure is often self-created. Rune and Medvedev weren't just playing their opponents, they were fighting their own expectations, fears, and mental narratives. Learning to compete against the person across the net rather than the voice in your head is crucial.
Today's upsets also remind us that in any high-stakes environment, whether tennis, business, or life, the pressure of expectations can be more dangerous than the challenge itself. The people who thrive are often those who can forget what they're supposed to achieve and focus on what they can control in the moment. Day 1 at Wimbledon 2025 will be remembered for its shocking upsets, but the real story is psychological. 2 top 10 players didn't just lose tennis matches, they lost battles with their own minds. Meanwhile, 2 underdogs didn't just win matches, they proved that mental freedom often beats technical superiority.
The lesson extends far beyond tennis courts. In any pressure situation, the weight of expectations can become heavier than the challenge itself. Today's results show what happens when psychological pressure overwhelms preparation and what becomes possible when that pressure is removed.
This episode was brought to you by Unstructi, where we examine the psychology behind spectacular success and devastating failure. Today's Wimbledon upsets weren't just about tennis. They were about the invisible mental game that determines who thrives and who crumbles when everything is on the line. Holger Rune and Daniil Medvedev will leave London questioning not just their games, but their ability to handle pressure. Nicolas Jarry and Benjamin Bonzi will leave with the confidence that comes from proving anything is possible when you have nothing to lose. The difference between these outcomes wasn't technical skill or physical preparation. it was psychology. And in the highest pressure moments, psychology is everything. Sometimes the biggest opponent isn't standing across the net, it's the expectations living inside your own head.